Welcome, welcome, my fabulous fempreneurs. I am excited for you today because of the great information that you're going to find here. I am here with Kimberly Graham, and she is the one that tells us how to get down to the nitty gritty of communication about money. And this is something that can really change your life. So listen carefully and grab your pen and paper while we welcome Kimberly. Welcome, welcome, Kimberly.
Hi. Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm grateful mostly that you're here to talk to us about money, something that is so important to all of our lives in many aspects, but we have a fear of having that conversation.
Yes.
So, I want to start with how did you finally realize? Because it takes a while for some of us,
Yes.
even entrepreneurs. How did you finally realize that having conversation about money is so essential?
It's interesting. It kind of takes a toll. It was a gradual thing. It was not overnight.
Mm.
It was not something that just kind of slapped me in the face one day and the angels came down and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. I need to learn more about money. I actually grew up very fearful of money. I loved spending it, but the idea of saving it, I felt completely just like confused by it. How much do I save? What do I save for? Credit cards scared me. The idea of owing someone money was something that I was scared of. And if I had continued to live my life that way without actually pursuing more information or pursuing a knowledge of how to manage it effectively, I feel like I probably would be like a lot of like entrepreneurs or a lot of people in the world who are just getting by, paying their bills, living paycheck to paycheck, and saying, "Yep, this is it. This is as good as it gets." But what happened was kind of a pivotal moment where my husband, we got married 13 years ago. And when we got married, he actually came into the marriage with $76,000 worth of debt. And it was a high interest and it wasn't consolidated. So we had a ton of like additional bills that came in. It was a lot of money. We're both teachers. And that was kind of the moment where I had to be face to face with my fear. Like, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. And was scared. He was like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, how do we handle this? It was student loan debt, and everyone told us, don't worry about it. This is just what everyone does. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is not something I can just be okay with.
Mm.
Um, and so that was kind of the pivotal moment for both of us that we were like, okay, we could either ignore this and just like skate by and have to borrow money, over and over again and just hope that we can just kind of live the life that we want to live and just ignore it, or we could do something about it. And we decided to do something about it. So we started learning, we started going to classes, we started saying like, how do we manage our money effectively so we can even just pay the bill? Because I don't even know what that looks like. And I think that was kind of the moment where we felt empowered that, wow, I think if we can really understand more and leverage the other things that we do, like just babysitting, tutoring, the little things we would do on the side, how much faster could we get rid of this? And it just became a question. And we started challenging ourselves. And 28 months later, we were debt free.
Whoa.
That was the moment for both of us within that time frame that we were like, if we can be happening to our money instead of letting it happen to us,
Mm.
what could we do? How could this change the trajectory of our life? And then when we started asking those types of questions, I think a lot of people get stuck in it could never be me. And they get stuck in the negativity. We asked a lot of questions. I asked a lot of questions. What do I want for my future? Okay, so how do we get there? What's my point A? What's the next step? Once we asked ourselves those questions, I think that's when things changed for us. Um, and it became more, not like a game, but it became fun. It became
Okay.
like exciting to talk about money because it was
Okay.
surrounded around dreams.
So you mentioned money happening to you and money happening for you
Yes.
and the transformation that occurred within that. Because I couldn't imagine some people would have, well, they might not have even gotten to the point of paying off that debt because it just seems so overwhelming. But you got to the point of paying it off, and you didn't just stop there and say, hey, let's go back to normal, which could put you in the cycle again of having more debt. You were like, let's ask more questions, let's learn more, uncover some ways that money can happen for us. And what does that look like when money is happening for you and not to you, and you're the victim of this debt?
Exactly. And I think that was, again, the pivotal moment for us when we were like, I don't want to be in this position again. Like, even though it was student loans, I want to get a master's eventually. How do we make sure that we don't run into this again? I want a house. I want a new car. I want a family eventually. How do we handle these like just typical lifestyle desires and wants without having to go into the same cycle again? And again, once we ask those questions, how can we make sure that money is happening to us instead of us, happening to our money instead of letting money happening to us? And we're just like, oh no, life is just throwing us curveballs and I guess it's just over for us. How can we make sure we're proactive? And it wasn't always perfect. There were definitely moments where curveballs happened and we were like, oops, we did not prepare for that. Okay. So, all right, well, we've had lots of like checkpoints of when things did work. So let's just what worked before and how can we make sure that we keep going. And yeah, and so that like got to the point where we eventually bought our first home and we didn't have any other debt, so we paid it off in 7 years. Like we were able to do that because we had the same skill set from being able to do that from our debt from before. And it allowed us to do so much more of the things we enjoy with our money, and our values were being like lifted and focused on. And so once again, like it made money so much more empowering, to think about what that could do for our wealth. How could we, build several streams of income? What would it look like if I went into business and quit my job? We're now talking about what if he quits his job and we kind of live a more nomadic lifestyle. What does that look like? And we're just never stopped dreaming. That's really, I feel like, where it comes down to it for us and for many of the people that we talk to.
Okay, so there's a dream, there's
Mhm.
asking the questions, but it seems like there's also a system that was in place to get there, to pay off this house. Where does someone who has no clue start to
This
build
is
a
great.
system?
I love this question. So good. So I always think about it as baby steps. So I know Dave Ramsey has baby steps and he's like, start with $1,000, which I think is not enough in our economy. $1,000 is not enough to start with, but it's a place to start, right? So I always think about it as like, as a mom, when I watch my kid learning how to walk, they start with one step, right? And when they get that one step, do they just figure out how to walk from that point on? No, they fall and they fall a lot. But what do we do? How do we respond as parents? I think this is really where it starts when people are like, how do I start? Because every time I decided to do it, something happens and it knocks me back and I just go, oh, forget it. It's not going to happen for me. So I want you to go back to that idea of like when your kid is learning how to walk and they fall, what's the response? Is the response, how can stupid? Why did you do that?
Mm.
Why did you fall? Why would you do that to your child? They don't know any better. They're learning it for the first time. So are you. So you have to give yourself grace. You have to applaud yourself for the things that you did do. You have to be like, okay, I did it. I went through. I tell my clients this all the time. 1 week. Can we figure out just one paycheck? Can we understand how to just work through that and be successful in that? Can we strategize through that one paycheck? If we can do that and you take that next step and I go, that's awesome. I'm so proud of you. If you take a fall, that's not the time for you to be like, this sucks. I'm horrible. No, no, no. You're learning. What did we learn? What
Okay,
pitfalls did we fall down into? So
okay.
if you're just starting out, you have to first give yourself grace and have the perspective in your mind of like, what do I want to accomplish? What is my first milestone that I'm attempting to go for?
Yeah, so this strategizing in step by step. So you have this one paycheck. Does it also include going and getting other side jobs? You mentioned something about babysitting and things
Oh
like
yeah.
that. What could a strategy, let's say I want to buy a car and my paycheck, it looks like I know it's going to take me several years or a couple of years to get to that point. How would I start to strategize?
Mhm. To get there. So, what I would do first is I would, and it's, I say one paycheck, it starts there, right? You do need to have an understanding of your debts, the amount of money, the expenses that you're paying in a given month. That is important for you to have a awareness of, and when it comes down in the calendar. So when you're thinking about that one paycheck and you're like, how far is this paycheck going to stretch in this 2 week period? How far is the next paycheck going to stretch in that next 2 week period? For some of us who are entrepreneurs, that's going to shift because some of us get paid. Some of you don't pay yourself effectively. That's a whole nother thing. But there's a lot of like fluctuating income there. So you're just going to have to do your best with that. I would start there first before we start taking extra jobs. Because if you don't know where you currently are and you don't know where you're currently spending, you don't know what habits you're falling into, you're going to
Okay.
fall into a whole bunch of pitfalls. So let's make sure we can catch that money first. Once we kind of get our place to a really a good place where we're able to say, this is my um you could say my foundation. This is how much I know I'm going to need. This is how much I need for the household. And you have that down pat. Then what I want you to do is I want you to research. What do you want to do? How do you want to feel in this car? What kind of car are we getting? What kind of loan are we getting? How much is it going to cost in a given month? And then once you kind of have that perspective down, what type of down payment do you want? Then we talk about what extra job can we get to specifically be for that particular goal. So that's when like the tutoring, the babysitting, any other thing, the new offer that you decide to come up with can now have a purpose. And there's something that I see a lot in the entrepreneurial space where we're really loving to share, 6 figure this, 6 figure that, multiple 6 figures. We love to throw that out there, but we don't really know what it means. So I
Mm-hmm.
meet with a I meet with a lot of entrepreneurs that are like, I just want to get to 10K months. That's what I want. And I'm like, okay, well, you're making 5K months now. What's that look like for you? Like, do you even know what's happening with your money here? So how is it really going to change when you get to 10K? Like,
Mm.
nothing's really going to change. And for many of them, they're like, no, I want this particular goal. But when we actually go down to the numbers and what you absolutely need, they actually need like $1,000 more. If they made $1,000 more, they could get to their goal. They don't need the 10K as much as they thought they did. They just fell into the trap of, I gotta have the 6 figure years.
Yes, yes,
um,
it's so funny you say that because I see that all the time. And those are what a lot of coaches are throwing out at you.
mhm.
But and it's okay if you have the goal to make six figures, but knowing your why and knowing the steps to get there, and moreover, knowing what you're doing with your money now is what you're saying. So
Mhm.
having your eyes wide open to say, okay, this is my goal and these are the steps that I need to take there and this is how I'm spending, like really, really paying attention to your money is what I hear you saying.
Yes, there's a saying out there that I hear all over the place, which I love. If you can't manage 100, if you can't manage 1,000, how are you going to handle 1,000,000? How are you going to handle 10,000?
Mm.
It really comes down to the basics. There's a lot of thought out there that the more money I make, the easier life will be. But we have lots of examples of people who are multi-billion, multi-million, and down the gamut. You can go through Hollywood and see lots of people who have ended up bankrupt, who have, don't have good communication with their spouse when it comes to money, who have a lot of like financial issues, who have horrible money mindset and just waste their money. It doesn't end just because you have more money. If anything, it enhances the habits that haven't been tackled, the mindsets that haven't been tackled, the the perspective that you have around money and what you even feel about building wealth. And so you
Interesting.
have to tackle that now in
Mm.
order to actually truly enjoy the wealth that you're accumulating and also the wealth that you currently have within you right now. You have abundance right now, but you have to know how to find it.
And it's interesting you say that because I talk to people at all levels. Sometimes who aren't entrepreneurs and they have this steady paycheck and it's pretty comfortable. Now they have big goals, but they're not paying attention to what's coming in or
Mhm.
managing it. And some of them are working in finance at that. And I've heard, the statistics of people who are working in finance who don't manage their money because they're managing other people's money or they're working at it at a certain level, but looking at what's coming in and what's going out, they're not in that habit because they're so reliant on this paycheck, which we all know could stop at any time.
At any time. Exactly. A lot of my clients, surprisingly so, are accountants, are, in the financial field in some way, shape, or form, and they feel embarrassed. They're like, how am I working in the financial field and I'm having a struggle with this? And I said, that's okay. Because you're so busy looking at everybody else's perspective and you can like get in there. But when you're looking at your own baggage, that's a different space, right?
Yeah.
Even I have coaches for things that I'm like, I can't see this within myself. It's really hard for me. I need somebody else to pick it out and say, no, 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 this is what you need to do. Actually, when it comes to strategy, for your finances or for this, right? Like I know how to manage it, but having that other person to like look it over is a valuable asset to your future and to your wealth because you can't do it all. Like you just can.
Yeah, yeah. And what you did was a bold step. The fact that you actually started looking at a lot of things that you did were bold. I mean, the fact that you entered this marriage, there's this huge amount of debt, and you took it upon yourself to start looking at it and figuring it out. I mean, I could just hear people saying, "I would have run the other way," because it's
So
too much.
many. Mm-hmm.
And the other part about it is that you did not have that conversation before the marriage, so you did not know what was getting into it. And I can understand that coming from the perspective of it's not polite or it's not part of the culture to
Right.
say what's your money situation when you're engaged or dating.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's your advice for someone who is dating? Let's start at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of times people will say, oh, you're not supposed to know that, or that's my business, or don't ask me about that. Are you trying to get in my pockets? But seriously, how can someone prevent themselves from getting into um, a marriage that might not last
Mm-hmm.
by starting at the dating level, opening up communication about money?
Yes. Such a good question because my experience is going to be different. I was 22 when I got married and we had dated pretty much all through high school. So, high school sweethearts, we didn't really talk that much about money because we didn't have any. With the exception of like what we made in our summer jobs. Um, so when the $76,000 again was debt from school that he really didn't have was privy to because his parents were just like, here, sign this, and it's FAFSA or whatever loan that he got from the bank, and so he just signed it because he was like, okay. And his mom told him like, you're going to be responsible for this when you're done, this is just what people do, and he was just like, okay. But when the mail started coming in and we realized it was our responsibility, we were like, oh no, right? So nowadays, we've been talking to a lot of couples who are either entering marriage, dating, and they're like, how do we start on the right foot? Like if you could do it over again and you were a little older and had some money, what would you do differently? And I think what really is important is to talk about your values. So don't go straight into the numbers conversation, right? What's in your 401k? That's a little bit too much, right? But I think if you're dating, it's important to understand their financial values. Like what are their family values? Do they expect you to be home and taking care of the kids? Or are they okay with you having a business? Talk about your dreams. Like what are the things that you would like to do? And have the conversation about, oh, well, if you were going to start a business, what business would it be? And how would you start funding said business? That's a really great way to see how resourceful they are, how hardworking they are, if they are serious about this, and if it's something that they're already starting, or maybe like already in the back of their head, they're already, creating a plan for it. It's a great way to get an understanding of not only their values, but how they view and how they value money and how they work with money. If you see people who are just like spending or, that's it and that's all they choose to do, a great thing to ask is, oh, well, what are the things that you enjoy spending on and why? What makes you the happiest? How do you make sure that you still have, the cash flow to do that? That's really awesome that you like to spend on shoes and whatever. And when you hear like, oh, I just put it all on credit cards, that's where that red flag comes in. Hold
Ah,
on. Where do you get that from? You understand kind of like the cogs, the wheels underneath it all, and you can start to kind of unearth some of the uh mindsets that they have around finances and kind of
okay.
understand how to work through that before you get into a more serious relationship
Okay,
around it.
okay. And what I get from, the example that you've set is that if they have those red flags, doesn't necessarily mean you have to run the other way. Because
Mhm.
not everybody knows, most people don't know that there is a money mindset that can be made more healthy.
Mhm.
So that first question that you spoke about, these values questions, and I hope our listeners have their pen and paper, as I said. The first question that you could ask them about their dreams, could you repeat
Mhm.
that again?
Yeah, it's important to ask the person what are their values? What are the things they really, dream about? Like if they could do anything in the world, start that business, be home and just be with your kids. Like what is a value that is the most important to you? That you feel like your purpose, that you feel like you're put on this earth for?
Mhm.
Um, that's a really important question to ask someone because then again, you're going to get kind of like a deeper understanding of what makes them tick, what makes them light up inside.
Okay.
And every decision that we make, believe it or not, is connected to our money, to our finances. So,
Glad you said that.
yeah.
Every decision we make is connected to our finances. Like, can I go for that? Or is that not for me?
Mhm.
It's kind of in the back of your mind. What can I afford, or what have people in my family or in my background afforded previously? It can be in there and you don't even know it, that something's
Exactly.
telling you no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for example, like I meet a lot of, people who want to be a freelancer, right? I'm working with a client, a couple right now that their goal that they recognize as a value for them is that they don't want to be tied down to a typical 9 to 5. It's not that they want to build a business, but they want to have the flexibility to kind of like have the freelancer lifestyle where they can teach, they can, teach classes and whatever, build, like rear their kids, but just be able to kind of live a very flexible living type of lifestyle. And I said, that's awesome that you know that. So we need to understand the numbers associated with that because there's a lot of different costs than a person who's going to stay at a typical 9 to 5 for the next 40 years, or a person who's choosing that they want to build a brick and mortar and build multiple six-figure businesses. There's going to be different values and different things that we have to think about there. So for them, we're talking about things like you're going to need to look at the cost of private healthcare. You're going to need to look at the cost of what does it look like to make sure you have an additional, maybe more so savings? Because if something happens to one of your freelancer gigs, you're going to need to have money available to you. We're going to be talking about investing more into your, lifestyle, into your retirement. And I don't go over retirement. I'm not a financial advisor, but we're going to have to talk about having someone who's going to be able to support you in that, building that wealth so then you can say, oh, we can actually retire early and we know exactly what that number is going to look like. That conversation for them and their values is going to be different than the conversation I have to the person who's working a typical 9 to 5 and is going to stay there for 40 plus years.
Mhm.
And I think that's the thing that's tricky about money is that it's not a cookie cutter situation. It's everybody's values are different.
So it's like a fingerprint for everybody. It's you gotta find out what your financial. They always talk about footprint on the computers. Find out what your financial footprint is, what it looks like, what matters to you, how you want to spend, what your goals are, and plan it. And not only plan it, but keep looking at it. Would you say daily?
Yeah, I would say when you have a budget, a money management system in place that again mirrors your values,
Hmm.
right? once you have that in place, I tell people when they're first starting, you're probably going to look at it probably every other day because this is new for you. Once again, going back to that baby learning how to walk, you're just figuring out how to look at your money from this perspective. The question I constantly have my clients ask themselves when they look at their budget, when they look at where their money has gone, does this reflect my values in a way that I will feel good about at the end of the month, in a way that my future self will be like, yeah, you definitely were able to enhance and say yes to a lot of your values.
Okay.
And before you think values just means I went and got Starbucks every day.
I was just gonna ask that, values can be such a broad thing, and some people
Mhm.
it's like, oh yeah, I've got a pedicure. No, wait a minute, what really are your
Mhm.
values?
Right. And so again, that's part of the first conversations I have, right? Your value is not necessarily that you want to be able to have the ability to say yes and say, I want to get Starbucks every day.
Mm,
Another part of a value that's attached to that is you value savings, then you value security so that you can go get to Starbucks every single day or go get your whatever it happens to be, your pedicure every single week, your beauty routine every single week. You are willing to sacrifice the shopping spree at X, Y, and Z because that's not a huge value to you, so that you can say yes to this other thing because that is a value to you, right? So
okay.
when you are looking at your financial system, you should be able to look at it and look at your purchases from the last week, 2 weeks, month, and say, all of my values for today and for tomorrow have been represented on this page. And I feel so satisfied and empowered by what I see on the page, as opposed to, I hate what I see. I hate the debt that I see. I hate that I spent it here, there, and everywhere, and I had no control over it. That's the opposite feeling you want to feel. So at first you're going to look at that probably every other day, twice a week max. Like that's a twice a week is a good place to start. After you get used to it and you're like in a groove and you're like, okay, I'm understanding this, I feel good about it, you're actually going to enjoy looking at your money more.
Mm.
But you can get down with just once a week. You can get down with once every 2 weeks once you really get it down. I just made a post today that I forget when payday is all the time because that's how automated my systems are. And that's how on top of it we are, that I don't even remember when payday is. I'm constantly like, did we get paid? Oh, I think we did. I don't know. We got paid at some point, but I don't know. Bills are paid. So
Yeah, yeah, and this day and age, that is one of the benefits. Like the money can come out automatically to pay certain bills, and it also can go into the savings towards the value that you system that you prioritize, and also
Mhm.
your
Exactly.
emergency savings, so
Mhm.
that when something hits the fan, you don't have to just panic and throw a lot of money at it. You can also, I think, negotiate on paying off those emergencies. Yeah, and a lot of people don't even realize the power they have to do that. And they in fear they just pay a whole bunch of money and then eat noodles or ramen for the next
Right.
month.
I can't tell you how many people, especially with medical debt, that's a big one too, where they're
Medical,
like, I
yeah.
just got this medical bill in and I have to pay for it. And I'm like, no, you don't. Take a breath. You're good. You are not, again, we're not letting money happen. Like we're happening to our money instead of letting money happen to
Okay.
us. Right. So if situations are happening where you're constantly in panic mode and we're like, I got it. And I'm like, no, you don't. Calm down. First of all, you're good. Call first, get
Hmm.
the information, stay calm, and work it through piece by piece. You do not have to be the person who feels like you are out of control. You are in control of your finances. And when you have that perspective, those curveballs don't shake you as much as they used to. And just like you said, having automation for things like savings for emergency funds and stuff like that. I actually have automations for things that are more fun and more short term and immediate. For example, like vacations or my clothing fund and hair fund, or like my daughter's tuition so I can pay for that in full before the school year begins because I don't want to have to think about it during the school year. So I can also put automations on things that are happening right now so that when my kids are like, Mommy, I want to go on, you know, I want to go to, the trampoline gym or something like that. It's not a, oh no, do we have enough for this? It's like, okay, let's go. Like that's not touching my day-to-day budget. That's something that I put aside 2 months
Mhm.
ago that I can say
Mhm.
yes to. And that's what I mean by your budget, your money management systems should allow you to say yes to your values, not just today, but also tomorrow. So you can constantly stay in your values, you can stay in your groove and staying empowered by your finances.
All right. So doing this together, that is the gold mine right there. The communication that you have with your spouse or significant other, what I don't want to say should that look like, but what can that look like where you're talking about it often enough, at least once a week, about what your goals are and your values are.
Yeah. So typically this is a big can of worms. So I'm trying to be like, okay, just talk about the big important points because we could go down a rabbit hole when we talk about money management in couples. Typically with a lot of couples, what I typically hear is that there's one that enjoys looking at the money, quote unquote, enjoys. Sometimes that person doesn't even enjoy looking at the money. They have just been pushed into it because they have to, because they're like, if I don't do it, they're not going to do it. So
Okay.
there's typically one person who's manning it. And the other person is like, tell me what I got to do. And I don't want to be a part of it at all. And either that person might be messing things up without recognizing they're messing things up, or they're just, again, have no understanding of what's happening in the finances. And so for them, it's really important for the conversation to not come from a space of, we are having an issue, therefore we need to have a money conversation. If
Mm-hmm.
every single one of your money conversations start because there is an issue to be solved, you are
Beep, beep,
creating
red light.
red light. You are creating
Run.
tension within your
Mm-hmm.
marriage simply because the moment you mention money, a meeting about money. I have to talk to you about money. There's tension. There's immediate, like, nope, don't want to be a part of it. You've just walked into an argument, right? Or you just walked into some type of argument, something that's outside of the realm of what we're talking about. So that's the first part. Um, what's important here is if you're trying to have better money communication, again, same thing about the dating thing. You know how they say, like, after you get married, you don't stop dating? Like,
Mm-hmm.
after you get married, you don't stop talking about, you don't just stop talking about money, right? You have to continue to have these money conversations about your values. It doesn't stop once you're in marriage. There's so many ebbs and flows and transitions in marriage between what's happening in life. You need to continuously have these dreaming conversations. So these money conversations are actually, we love to, my husband and I actually have where we talk about it on our podcast. Surround your conversation around positivity, around dreaming, around goals. So when we,
Positivity, dreaming, and goals. Okay.
yes. So you start with gratitude. I'm so excited to have this conversation about how we're going to get to Disney World this year. Notice, I'm not talking about the bills that we have to pay for this week, right? Does Disney World have to do with the bills from this week? Yes. But we have to have a goal in mind. If we both agree that we want to go to Disney World and take our kids to Disney World, let's talk about that trip. Let's really lay it out. Let's have a good time and talk about how much it's going to cost. Okay, it's like 10 grand. All right. I don't want to pay for this all in credit. I would like to pay for some of this in cash. Do you agree? Yes, I agree. Well, then we're going to have a conversation. You see where we're going, about what we're doing today so that tomorrow, so that end of the month,
Mm.
we can say yes to this trip. So then every single decision we're not making it separately. We're not saying, okay, you have to do this if you want us to go to this trip. Okay, fine. We just put it on credit. Like, I'm over it. Like, I'm over talking this about you. Now it becomes a team effort. Okay, I think, you know what? Maybe if we decided that we put $500 away every single week. I'm just throwing numbers out there. I know people might be like, $500, girl. But you get what I'm saying. Let's put this X amount of dollars away every single week. And then we can get to our goal by the end of this quarter. Does that sound fun? I think we could do that. Now you have them engaged in a goal that you're both shooting for. Then the money conversations become more engaging, more fun, more about dreaming, more about positivity, more about goals, less about, why did you spend this much here? You messed it up. You see the difference. And I
Yeah.
say that because I am that person who would mess it up.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I was the spender.
Oh, okay, okay. But yeah, I could be the person who's like, you messed it up. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. So, I'm loving this. Start from a place of positivity, gratitude, dreaming. Did I miss one? Was the
No,
third
that
one?
was it. Positivity,
Okay,
positivity,
positivity, dreaming,
gratitude,
gratitude,
dreaming.
the values. Don't stop talking about values just because you got married. Bring in the value conversation. If you don't even know what you mean by values, look it up. Get some
Yep,
ideas
yep,
of what those dreams are and set them free. And then
exactly.
you're building your team.
Yep.
Mm.
And when people are able to do that, and I know it sounds easier said than done, but my husband and I have a resource that I'm welcome to give to anybody who wants it, who's listening to this, called Two Questions Before Bed. We laugh because you know how sometimes you're in bed with your partner, you're about to go to sleep, you know, the lights are off, and all of a sudden one of you, which is typically me, has this existential question. And you ask it to your partner, and your partner's like, "Are you for real? We're talking about this. It is 10 o'clock at night." But you kind of like laugh about it, or you have a conversation about it, and it's nothing serious. It's nothing deep. It's just you're just having a funny conversation. You're laughing with each other. So we have this thing called Two Questions before bed that are just like very lighthearted conversations that get into the values that your partner has.
Mm.
And it's just a fun conversational. We could totally turn it into a game if we wanted to, of just like, tell me more about this, you know, and getting to know your partner more in a fun and less like pressure environment.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how you get to the nitty gritty of like your partner, because you can start to lose that as you get into a relationship and your marriage and you get stuck in the humdrum of the everyday. This is a way to ignite that. And so again, you can bring that into your money conversations and kind of create more fun and excitement around the conversations. That this
So
is where I want to be after we get out of this debt or whatever. This is where I want to be. Then that's the reason why we have to sit and go over this debt and pay it off.
So it's like permission to have a deep conversation before you start snoozing, which they probably might fall asleep, but either way, it's
That's
permission to
fine.
put it out there and just open the door to really getting to know the person. And what
Yep.
I love about this is because when you watch all the reality TV that's out there and how the value system is, oh, you look like this, I
Mm-hmm.
look like this. Oh, maybe you live in this city. Oh, I live in this city too. Oh, and the one I really love. Oh, you want to have two kids? I want to have two kids too. Let's get married or
Right.
let's start dating. Seriously,
It's so much deeper than
you
that.
don't know that person.
Uh-huh.
You don't know their footprint, their fingerprint, their uniqueness.
Mm-hmm.
So, what you're saying is really opening up couples to really build a better relationship, not only around money, but just opening their eyes to who they are dating and living with.
And living with, yeah,
Mm,
because again, that person is going to shift and evolve. You are
mm,
not a consistent person here on out forever and ever. You're going to change and shift and evolve. And so you need to keep getting to know your partner, and you need to keep getting to know their values because they're going to shift as well.
okay.
I might have started the process, you know, or started marriage with the idea that I was going to be an administrator and I was going to, you know, be the principal of a school. That obviously didn't happen. I decided to be a CEO. So like that's, I mean, I'm still kind of a leader, I guess. It's just a different type of student. Instead of
Yeah.
teaching second graders, I'm teaching adults. But that evolved and a lot of conversations had to happen. And if you're not ready for that, and if that just comes out like out of nowhere where you're like, I'm done, I'm quitting, you're like, where did that happen? When did you shift? When did you change? You stopped talking to your partner. You didn't even see the signs that they were showing you very clearly that there's an evolution happening. So you have to keep that door of vulnerability open in your relationship and your communication so that you are aware of that. And then you can actually make sure that your finances align with any shift that's going to happen in the future, whether it be a year from now or 5 years from now. If you
Okay.
decided to say, I think I'm done with this job now, I think I'm
Yeah.
ready to quit. We've already been saving for it. Have fun, babe. Enjoy. That's a beautiful space to be in.
And we can all agree on the importance of money in a relationship, or the need for it at least. So that can be a starting point to opening up these more deeper conversation on values and goals.
Mhm.
So, I feel like we nailed it today. Thank you so much, Kimberly.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming here and just laying out a roadmap for us to really uplevel our lives and have better relationships. Not
Mhm.
just better money and money goals, but better relationships. That
Yeah.
is awesome. And I just want to thank you again for coming today and sharing with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I could talk about this all day, every day. There's so many topics that were unearthed in our conversation that are smaller conversations that we could just like talk about. So anytime anyone has questions, I am an open book and love having conversations around this.
Yes. Thank you again.